It's the agents of Nightvault.
And we're back again with a Talking Heads piece for a couple of weeks since our last one, and we know how much we enjoy them, so we're back again, chewing the fat of what's going on in Shadespire Nightvault world. When I say chewing the fat, I should say chewing the fack, because we're going to talk about the FAQ tonight.
Yeah, I am fucking amazed by it, frankly.
Well, some of it is a little bit, I was thinking of it, some of it is a little bit of an FAQ, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is, yeah. It's nice to see that we called so much of it wrong. It makes me question why we bother.
It's good to know. I think if you do have any rules queries when you're not sure how things do work, then do get in touch with Pete or I, ask us, and then do the opposite. Because I think we were pretty much 100% wrong on all of the close calls.
We were.
But I don't want to dwell on that too much.
No, we just want to go through, I think, our choice morsels from the FAQ, things that we either thought were completely different to how they've been ruled, or maybe things that we think are interesting rulings, and just talk about them a bit. And obviously you guys at home can then chime in with your own opinions.
Absolutely. So this is not an exhaustive list of all the changes in the FAQ. These are just a few things that stood out to Pete and I when we were chuntering about it behind the scenes.
Yep, mumbling, grumbling.
Okay, so what was the first one, Pete?
So the first one we had on the list was, I'm not sure if it's actually in the FAQ itself, it was to do with the Night Haunts and Varklav's ability and the ability to push them, or how they move and get pushed through blocked hexes. Yes,
it is in the FAQ, Pete. It's right at the bottom of page 4.
Aha. So it basically says in there, can the fighters in the Thorns of the Bride Queen be pushed through blocked or occupied hexes? And the answer to that is no. They can only move through those hexes when making a move action, included as part of a charge action, but they cannot be pushed or driven back into a blocked or occupied hex.
Indeed. Now, I think Pete and I had seen the writing on the wall for this one. We had originally interpreted it the other way around, so that you could push things through. But I think there were enough people out there who could make convincing arguments for why it would only be on moves. I don't think we ever really disputed that. We really felt, though, that it was obvious that they should have put move action on the card in the first place rather than just move.
It bugs me more by the fact that they didn't make the wording on the card more
obvious.
Common formatted. Yeah, there. It should have just said action, like the goblins have the scurry action. It should have just said ghostly move or something like that, and it just say this counts as a move and enables them to move through occupied or blocked hexes or something like that.
Be much clearer.
So and it doesn't cover lethal hexes. It doesn't mention lethal hexes, so they still do ignore lethal hexes even when pushed back from an attack or pushed by Varklav's ability. But what it does mean is when you attack them, you can effectively trap them because they can't get pushed back through other models.
Yes, good point, yes.
So that's the first one on the list.
Okay. The next one I would like to talk about, at least, is Extreme Flank, which I don't think this FAQ has made it any clearer at all to anybody.
I think it's partially made it clearer and made it worse at the same time.
Okay.
I don't think it's cleared it up at all, really, but yeah.
No, so Extreme Flank is an objective. It's a universal objective, isn't it, Pete?
So it says, score this in an end phase if there is a friendly fighter on an edge hex and another friendly fighter on an edge hex on the opposite edge of the battlefield to the first fighter. Where there is more than one opposite edge, it must be the furthest of these edges.
Which I kind of took to mean either lengthways or widthways, but if the board was offset, it was from the furthest two edges on the offset side.
I think we kind of assumed it would be... Yeah, I think we assumed it would be it would always be the furthest two edges because... Or else it was a really, really easy card to score for 2 glory.
Yeah, although we have been playing it that you could do... It wasn't the furthest, just literally the furthest 2 edges on the board, i.e. the top and bottom or the width if you were playing wide. It was just, it was you could use both length and width of the board, but if your boards were offset, then you couldn't go on the short edge. You'd have to go right off to the top. I haven't explained that very well at all. But now I had seen some diagrams before this FAQ was written, which went against that, and they were basically saying because you choose the fighter, the first one, you can choose if you've got 2 fighters and they're not on. So one's that it's really hard without a picture.
It is, yeah. But if you've effectively got one on the inside edge of your board, for example, then you have to use the one on the outside edge of your board as well, assuming they're off-centered.
Yes.
But if you have one on your opponent's far side edge, then your next one has to be or can be on your far side edge as well.
Yes.
But you could equally pick, if you've got a fighter in both positions on your inside edge and your opponent's outside edge, you could pick either one of those to start with. You didn't always have to pick the furthest one away.
No, which is really bizarre to me. I think it's kind of like
it makes it easier to win, really.
Yeah, and I just think it doesn't make sense. How can if it's going to be the furthest edge, it should be the two furthest edges, not the one. Oh, I'm choosing this fighter because it's closer to that fighter. I understand why people have read it that way. I'm surprised the FAQ has cleared it up in that direction, but actually it hasn't really cleared it up because it kind of just says, do both fighters need to be on the furthest opposite edge from each other? This is on page 4 of the FAQ as well. And the answer is no, the second fighter must be on the furthest opposite edge from the first fighter. Well, yes.
That means you can basically, you pick your fighter, don't you? You pick the order in which you set up this objective.
Which I do. Maybe it has cleared it up. When I've read it out loud, it doesn't seem quite so bad. But I just feel, I don't know, it seems like that card...
it's a very easy card to score for any big warband, really.
Absolutely. And I was trying to work out whether it promoted or the opposite of promoted offsetting boards, and I can't quite decide because I think if you're not playing extreme flank, I suppose you're always going to try and set the boards up square. But if you are, then you might be more inclined to set them offset. But I don't know. I guess
it depends on your tactics, because I think some people do like to put them offset a lot. We are a bit different in that we quite always pot them dead on. Yeah. And I think that I did think to start with, the extreme flank meant that your two fights had to be as far apart as possible. So if you had multiple options, you always had to pick the furthest ones apart, and that would encourage offsetting the boards. But now, I don't think it does at all. I don't think it makes any difference, really, because you can set them up wherever you like.
Yeah.
And if you're playing lengthways as well, this card becomes even easier to score, because your fighters only have to be about 4 hexes apart.
Well, exactly. And it is quite easy to score now, I think. I mean, unless you're a 3-person warband, maybe a 4-person warband, you're almost certainly going to take it, aren't you?
Even 3-person warbands, I think I would probably think about taking this, because it might be harder late game, but if you get this early game, it's probably a very easy 2 glory to get.
Do you think?
Unless your opponent suddenly whips out a great concussion or something.
I kind of feel like with the 3-person warbands, often the position relative to each other is quite important. And okay, if you've gone a long ways, well, you've got a short. If you've got a short edge, then maybe. But if you haven't got a short edge, I think it might be tricky to score, and without ruining your position. But yeah, you might be right. I don't know.
True. I mean, if you're playing a turtling stormcast of some kind, that on a long board, that could be a very easy 2 glory.
Yeah, it could. That's true. That is true. So
there's that one. So there's that.
That was in Street Flake. We're not overly happy with that, but yeah, we'll live with it.
Yeah, I think it makes it easier to score, so it'll probably just feature a lot more in our decks.
Yes, I think it probably will. Maybe it's going to be the new Alone of the Darkness.
Well, yeah, or the new Escalation. In fact, screw Escalation. I'll take this instead. I think it's easier.
Yeah, yes, I think it might be. Although in Escalation, you can score when your opponent's hammering you as well.
That is true.
The next thing, I think, Pete, is the magic dice.
It is attack dice versus spell dice.
Yes, spell dice. Sorry, not magic dice. The spell dice. I think this is near the beginning of the FAQ.
It's to do with Awakened Weapon, and does Awakened Weapon allow you to re-roll spell attack dice?
Yes, on page 2.
Or, yes, the actual question is, are magic dice considered to be attack dice when you make a spell attack action? And it has an inordinately long explanation as well that goes with it.
And the answer is no. That's the first part of the explanation. But basically, if it says attack dice, then that refers to the dice which are rolled in a traditional attack and not the spell dice. But if it just says +2 dice on your next attack action, then that's fine. Then you can roll extra spell dice.
Yeah, or re-roll a dice or something like that. So the examples it gives in the FAQ are light armor would not affect spell attack actions because it says attack dice. However, cards that just affect the dice characteristic, for example, Army of 1 would give a wizard 1 extra magic dice for their spell attack.
Yes, it's almost like they thought of spell dice after they wrote that card, because Army of 1 came out later and hadn't thought of it earlier on when they did the Awakened Weapon card. Who knows?
I think it's. I think that's a prime example of GW's slightly woolly wording that goes on their cards, and it just fits, which is maybe a happy accident, maybe happenstance there. But yeah.
On the subject of which, they have actually changed one of the cards. If you look in the errata rather than the FAQ, they've errated total offence. And total offence now says, when the fighter makes their first attack action in an activation or power step, which is interesting, other than an attack action made as a part of a charge action, you can choose for that attack action to have +2 dice. So basically, total offence has been reworded so that you can add spell dice.
Yes, yeah.
I say that, I can't remember what the original
handy.
text was, but yeah, it does appear that you can use it on spell dice, which is quite potentially interesting, especially if you've got that ploy or upgrade that enables you to sort of max out your crits. You could blow yourself up or do potentially quite a lot of damage.
You could, yes.
So,
yeah, I mean, anyone where it says do +1 damage for every crit you roll or whatever, that could be very handy.
Yes, so that's interesting change of total offence there, kind of married up. That's on a separate document. That's on the Errata rather than the FAQ.
Yeah, we will stick the links to both of these in the description below, of course, for your reading pleasure.
Moving on.
The next one is Chain Lightning.
Chain Lightning, yes. And now, Chain Lightning was a pretty rubbish card anyway, but it was good fun to have, so I always wanted to pick it. But now I think it's been made even sort of totally rubbish. I'm not even sure I can justify picking it, even though it's fun. Chain Lightning works by you roll 3 scatter dice and then you ping it around between squares, depending on hexes, depending on what you roll. And you can go anywhere, and if every person you hit, you do a point of damage. Now, we had been playing it that you could ping back and hit somebody else and do 2 damage. So you might hit somebody with the first move, go off the hex for the next move, and then come back and hit them for the final move, do 2 damage total. Well, that's been nerfed. You can only do a maximum of 1 damage, which I think makes Chain Lightning almost pointless to have.
Almost pointless. It does almost. I mean, the spell card itself reads, if this spell is cast, scatter 3 from the caster's hex. Any enemy fighter in a hex in the chain suffers 1 damage. So it could be interpreted that way, that it does just cause 1 damage to anybody under the lightning's path, regardless of how many times it moves across them. This just clarifies that, and I do think it clarifies it and makes it a bit worse. I'm not sure when you take Chain Lightning, unless you have a lot of objectives which are damage multiple opponents or things like that, and even then it's so random.
Spell damage, it's so random, it's not very reliable at all. And it was part of the fun was that you might actually do 2 damage to something, which against a smaller warband is potentially fatal, and even against the sort of tougher characters, it could halve the damage, which soften them up. So, but it's very. I mean, I haven't worked out what the odds are, but the odds of actually hitting somebody and then moving off the square and coming back to it are fairly low, I think.
I think so.
I think that's a poor decision personally. But it does raise an interesting question, which somebody raised on one of our videos today. Will it be the same for the Goblin Fanatic? Will you only be able to hit for 1 damage? And I think the answer to that is no. But it does now need an FAQ because people were going to say, "Well,
that question,
well, you can you or can't you?" I don't know. I mean, I think probably. I mean, to bear in mind we get everything wrong, but I reckon there's a 90% chance that the Goblin, partly because they move the person,
they push the person away, yes, and they keep knocking them back.
Yeah, I think they will do extra damage, but who knows? So it's going to have to be FAQ.
We've been wrong many times before.
We have been wrong many times before. So that's Chain Lightning, and the next thing on the FAQ is no time. But we can't talk about that because we haven't got time. Well, yes, exactly. So, unfortunately, nobody played No Time before I made that joke. No Time has been changed to say... have you got the text in front of you there, Pete?
I do indeed. So the card for No Time says, no more power cards can be played until after the next activation, which makes it sound like it's an activations 1 to 3 kind of deal, and if you play it in activation 4, that would be pointless?
Well, it wouldn't be pointless necessarily, would it? Because you would stop somebody playing Great Concussion if you played it right at the end of your turn.
Possibly, true. Yeah.
But what I wouldn't have expected it to do, or what I don't think it did do before this FAQ, was allow you to play it and stop your opponent playing power cards in the
keys
end step.
Yeah, any keys or upgrades or anything like that, if they've been holding on to a whole fistful of upgrades, waiting for their glory that they rack up from some easy kills or something like that, and then playing all their upgrades right at the end.
Well, you do. I tend to hold on to mine. It's a tough one, but sometimes you do hold on to them for reasons, don't you?
Yes.
And then you spend them so you can draw new cards, and suddenly you wouldn't be able to. And then you'd want to play them at the beginning of the next activation, but then you wouldn't be able to redraw your hand, so it would actually be pretty crippling. So I think it makes No Time more powerful, I think.
It does. Your opponent might be sitting on a whole load of upgrades, waiting for a load of glory that they're going to earn at the end of that phase, because maybe they haven't managed to kill anyone, and they're just sitting on a load of passive objectives that they're going to score, and then suddenly they can't actually do any of their upgrades. So they've either got to then bin a handful of upgrades and then pick a load of new cards, or then go into the second or third round toting the same cards again and not cycling through their deck.
No, exactly. So, I mean, I think it makes No Time much more worth having. I've never picked it before. I think I've thought I'll always live with whatever you throw at me if you see what I mean. If you play Great Concussion, so be it. Because getting the timing right is pretty hard. You can play it when you haven't got Great Concussion or whatever. It's a wasted card. But now it's really not. If you play it at the end of the first or second round, then it's potentially huge. So I might have to think about putting that in my deck from now on.
I think this card could definitely come into its own a lot more as well if you're playing best of threes.
Definitely.
It's much more of a mind game.
Yes.
Once you whip it out in the first game, your opponent's then got to sit there in the second and possibly third games thinking, I've got to play these upgrades. A bit like with I can't remember the name of the card where you can possibly steal a glory from your opponent. It's in a case of, do I sit on these glory?
Yeah.
Daylight robbery. That's the one. Do I sit on these? Do I do something with them now? You might then force your opponent into making an action that they regret. And
we've all had that.
Yes. Regularly, without any need for external cards to influence me at all.
So yeah, I think no time. Actually, I think that's quite a positive change. An unexpected one, but an unlooked for one maybe, but a positive change, I think.
Yes.
Okay, finally, I think we have the very strange ones at the top, which kind of show up another little aspect of the game. But the ones at the top, I think, are when I choose a game board, can I choose one of my opponent's collection? The answer is no. And when I place the last rejected token, can I place it in an edge hex, even if there is a hex other than an edge hex that I can place it in? Now, somebody very kindly keeps leaving comments on our videos, so you can't put it in an edge hex, and we patiently explain that you can. This has finally cleared that up. You can place it in an edge hex, even if there are other places to put it.
Yes.
The other one...
Can you choose a board in your opponent's collection?
It would never, ever, ever occur to me to ask that question. And the answer is no. But I think that highlights how what one person thinks is completely obvious, other people think it worth asking.
Yes, and I think a lot of people tend to fall into that trap online of, well, I obviously know what this card is, and you'd have to be a moron to not completely understand it how I've just understood it. So, you know, I'm going to treat you as such and generally be very abrupt and possibly quite insulting into the mix.
So bear in mind when commenting, I suppose, is that, you know, people, especially people with English as a second language, they're reading the English cards, can read things differently in a different way, and give them a break.
Yeah. I mean, just, you know, if you look at a card and someone's saying, oh, this card, time trap, can I do this with it? And they're asking something which is completely obvious. You know, don't respond with, well, duh, have you not read the card? Maybe just go, yeah, you've got it right, you've got it bang on. Or if they're getting it wrong, just say, no, you've misunderstood it. It's quite easy to misunderstand it. I think a lot of the times, a lot of these cards are worded quite badly in some respects. Some of them are terrible.
I think there are some translation issues as well, aren't there? Some of the other languages here, people say that they're really different. So just bear in mind, everybody, that, you know, not everybody is coming from the same page as you are, and, you know, keep it civil, which most people do, to be fair. Most people do. It's just quite irritating when you go, people say, I can't possibly believe anybody would read this other than this way. And it's like, well, the whole discussion thread wouldn't be here if people didn't. So, why bother commenting that?
Such is the English language that you can have the same sentence and read it with a different inflection and mean something very different, punctuation notwithstanding. And I know everybody online is an English major with, you know, a degree in the English language and how you should correctly structure every English sentence, but that's not always the case, and sometimes the wording on the card might be incorrect insofar as GW might not have made it very obvious or obvious enough what they were getting at, which seemed obvious to them at the time but isn't obvious to all of us laymen.
Yes, absolutely. I think what's not being said here, obviously, is that Pete is on the back end of this all the time. People, you know, he just asks his questions, and people just been mean to him because he doesn't understand how they work. So just be a bit nicer to him, please.
Leave me alone.
So I think that's everything we wanted to know, wasn't it? I
think so. I think those are all the points we want to cover, and just generally say everybody should just get along and be nice.
Yes, absolutely, particularly to Pete. I think we've talked about this for far longer than I ever imagined possible. So until next time, with another Talking Head or maybe a Match of Shades bar, we will see you soon.